Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be working with you today. Like Salima mentioned, I am a former classroom teacher. I taught out here in Denver for several years, primarily English. But I'm really excited to be working with you guys and to kind of onboard you through the PlayPosit process. So I'm going to go ahead and start with sharing my screen. And I want to just show you my contact info right off the bat. That way, you can take it down as a note. Um, and let me present that. 1 second. All right, so here's my contact info. As Selena mentioned, I am your primary point of contact. Always feel free to reach out to me, whether it's, if you're troubleshooting an issue or you need a refresher on a, particular feature, maybe ideas on best how to leverage PlayPosit for a specific use case. I am more than happy to help you with everything and all of the above. My email is really easy. It's just rob@playposit.org. Or you can always contact me on my direct line. This is my work cell, so you can either call me or text me if that's easier, more convenient for you. For today, there's a couple of things I wanted to go over. The first is I want to start off with the introduction to what PlayPosit looks like. So I'll go through an introductory bulb and kind of give you a feel of the things that you can create using our platform, just to kind of give you a point of reference. And then we'll kind of get to the nuts and bolts of starting the PlayPosit process. Well, how to log into PlayPosit, how to create a course, creating a bulb, monitoring student data, and then just kind of basics of navigating our site, where things are, what our pre-made bulbs look like, those kinds of things. And then we'll kind of wrap up today with, if we have time, going over the Learner Made bulbs or broadcast portions of our platform. If not, I do want to give you guys some time for a workshop where you can get kind of hands-on, start creating a bulb, and then I'll be here to answer any questions live if they arise. And then I'll become like a Q&A session as well, during that process. I do want to mention though, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please don't hesitate to stop me in the moment. I really welcome disruptions, because I'd rather answer your questions in the moment and alleviate the risk of you forgetting that question if we're holding it till the end of our presentation today. So definitely feel free to interrupt me with questions or clarifications. And if we are all ready to go, we're going to go ahead and start. So I'm going to jump into a sample bulb. So this is what it looks like, and this is what we're going to go through the process of the video builder of creating a bulb here. I wanted to show you just some of the sample questions that we have. That way you can get a feel for, again, how PlayPosit can be used. In this case here, this is a biology lesson on muscle contraction. I have my directions written out in one question here. I have several fill in the blanks. I have a multiple choice where, we're asking typical standard recall questions. Before we could talk about muscle contractions, we got to talk about, ADP and what that chemical stands for. You can embed videos for your students for a quick review, embed diagrams as well for them to analyze and use for their responses. And in this case here, it ends with another diagram that goes to specific steps of the muscle contraction process, where I want them to label, step 1, what's happening, step 2, what's happening, so on and so forth. I have a sample Spanish bulb as well. Go ahead and mute this. So I heard that there was a world languages teacher here, but this is also great for, if you ever want to utilize our voice recorder within your PlayPosit lesson. So in this case here, it's a transcript of a conversation in Spanish. In this particular lesson, I started off with a pop quiz on vocabulary. And again, that's fill in the blank, where they have to translate all these different phrases. And then it moves on to a portion where they're actually listening to part of the Spanish conversation, and then they translate it for me into English. And then, they hear this clip again and answer questions about that conversation. Who's talking? What are they saying? Please fill in this format. So that's another way that you can leverage that voice recording feature with our PlayPosit platform. And the last thing I want to go over is a sample feeder bulb. And sorry, also, we use the term bulb. I always forget to start off with this. We use the term bulb a lot in our vernacular. It's just our terminology for a video lesson. We use multiple videos for a bulb, so we have to kind of distinguish between the two terms. So a bulb is just a completed PlayPosit lesson. I'll use that term pretty frequently. Sometimes I might slip and say video lesson, but they're both the same thing. So in this case here, this is a play of Anything goes, a pretty popular play. At the very beginning, again, this instructor had comments that they put in. Um, and thank you for listening out the teachers, as well as the different subjects. I'll try to, point out features that I think would be particularly useful for different content areas. I hyperlinked a link here maybe to last week's notes. And then as we continue, I have my students base. So let's see, what's happening in this finale scene here with different pictures of, other sets, the same exact play. And what we're analyzing in this question is how, the set construction can really affect the mood of a musical. So I give them not only the example that they're watching in the video, but also, quick screenshots and even maybe a clip of another whole set design that they'll use for their response. So, again, we'll go into depth on how to kind of construct these questions. I just wanted to give you a look at kind of what's possible with our platform and some of the more nuanced features that you can absolutely record and add into your different questions that you decide to create. So let's go ahead and kind of jump straight into the process of using PlayPosit. So I'm going to move away from here, and we'll start off with just this navigation portion. So let me log out so we can start from the very beginning. So if you guys are using Google Single Sign-On or Clever, it's really easy to access PlayPosit. You're going to go to playposit.com, select a login, and there should be a login SSO for Clever, and then one for Google Single Sign-On. You're just going to select whichever process you use, select the correct email that's associated with your account, it's probably your school email, enable those permissions, and it'll be logged straight into PlayPosit. So it's a pretty quick and easy process. And then notice also that there's going to be this prompt in the top right corner to have you move to our new navigation, our new user interface. If you lose it for some reason, you just simply click refresh, and it should appear again. I'm going to train you on this new interface because we'll be switching over to that permanently pretty soon. And I think it's just a nice, cleaner and easier to use way to access our platform. So once you're in the new interface, you'll be directed straight into your bulbs library. If you're brand new to PlayPosit, it might be a little empty. If you have used PlayPosit in the past, you'll see some of your lessons there. Before we jump into kind of creating lessons, the first thing I want to go over is creating a class. That way we can assign the bulbs to the correct class once they're completed. So anything new you want to create on our platform, you'll see your button will be blue, but this big blue new button in the left corner. This is where you create new bulbs, classes, units, learner-made bulbs. You're going to click into a class, go ahead and title that course, and then click Create. And then under your classes dropdown, you will see the class that you just created. It will be empty. That's because we got to upload students into that course. So from this part, you go down and click Students. You will be able to upload a roster. It's going to take just a second. And then from here, if I have an Excel spreadsheet with my students' first, last name, and their email or a username, I can just simply copy and paste that here. For a password, I usually just put PlayPosit as a dummy password. And then works as an Excel. I can click and drag that file all the way down. If they're signing in with a Google SSO or a Clever SSO, however, they won't have to worry about putting in a password because it'll authenticate them just by using their email that you placed here. And then,
sorry, could you repeat that one more time? Because I want to make sure our staff really caught that if they're signing in with Google or Clever, because we have both. So they're going to use the Clever portal.
Great. So if they're using Clever, they'll do the exact same process that you did. Is they'll just click that sign in with Clever, that single sign-on. So this password here becomes irrelevant because as long as their email is within our platform, we just pull that in and authenticate them through the email address. So this dummy password is more of just a placeholder, so you can upload your roster. Otherwise, that Clever single sign-on or that Google single sign-on will really, take over the process that to actually put in their email or their password.
So if a student signs in through our Clever portal, will it automatically populate them into our because they're assigned to our teachers, like it knows, or is there like a class code or something like that?
Great. So that's the next step. So the first way that you can add students to a class is going through this process here, selecting this drop down and putting them in a specific course. An easier way to have students join a class is once they log in with Clever through that single sign-on, they'll be prompted to, there's like this huge green button, and it's going to ask for or prompt them to join a course. So I can actually show you what that looks like real quick. So this is PlayPosit. I'm going to log in as a demo student that I have. So again, your students will log in with Clever. For my demo account, I don't have access to a Clever single sign-on. So we will skip this. And this is actually my teacher account. Let me log in with my student. So when students log in, there's this big add class button in the top right corner. They click that add class. Each one of your instructors has a unique 6-digit code for them. In the case of myself, it's W33FD4. This is unique to me, so I can put this on the board. Students log in with Clever, and they'll put the 6-digit information here. And then they'll click search. And all the courses that I own appear for my students. So they will just simply click the correct class that they belong in. That way you don't have to manually upload them on your end. They can, log into PlayPosit, put in that 6-digit code, and then, say this is like period 1, that's where I belong as a student. I'll just click into that class, and then everything is good to go. So that's the other option to have students join a course. And then are your instructors using Clever? Is no one using Google Classroom at your school site?
Most of them are using Classroom. They have the option to not use it.
Okay.
A lot of them are using Classroom and could use those instructions how to upload a class.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one more process for engaging Google Classroom with our platform. So these two ways I showed you are our standard default ways of uploading a roster, either manually or students can upload themselves by searching through your teacher code. The last way that a student or that you can add a roster to a PlayPosit class is if you go into your PlayPosit account and on the old builder, so there's only like 2 functionalities of our old builder still that are not in place in our new builder yet. And one of them involves Google Classroom Sync. So from our old builder, if you click fill out profile and scroll down, there's actually a Google Classroom Sync option. What that'll do is it'll pull all the classes and rosters you have set up in Google Classroom and populate them in PlayPosit. So you don't have to worry about uploading them manually or creating that material manually. You can just do this Google Classroom Sync and it's all done for you. I know that was 3 different ways, both after session one after the other. Are there any questions on that process?
Are you moving the Google Classroom Sync to the new platform?
We are. It's something tricky for some. Well, I'm not a developer, and my development team tells me it's pretty tricky to move it over. So it's on our wish list. It should happen pretty soon, and just make it like a one-stop shop on the new builder or the new interface. But for now, this is where it's located.
And the sync is a one-time thing, so if they have students that are added later, they would need to give them the code. Is that correct?
Correct. So if you have students that are added later, you can give them the code, or you should be able to just resync it, and then it'll adjust the roster in the classes.
Thank you.
So I think does that answer the question that was in the chat as well? Google Classroom Sync update. So it doesn't auto update. You have to resync it, and then it should update fine. Okay, great. So now that we have kind of gone over the process of creating a class and uploading a roster, we can now jump into creating a bowl. So I'm going to exit out of this old builder here. So under, again, my PlayPosit account, I'm just going to start this process by clicking the new button. Again, yours will be blue, and then clicking bold. And I'll be directed straight to my video builder. From here is where I kind of start the process of creating content that I'm assigning to my class. I can enter a video URL here, anything from YouTube, Vimeo, TeacherTube, Shmoop, Shomi, SchoolTube. If you're using Loom as a screencast app, you can upload the URLs here as well. So there's just a lot of different options that you can place here. I know that some of you guys are creating your own videos and posting them on YouTube. The link will work as long as it's not set to private. So if they are set to private, you got to switch it to unlisted, and then we're able to pull those videos from YouTube that you generated, and then you can use those as your base. Another different option that we have is this video MP4 uploader. What this does is we will host an MP4 video on our platform on your behalf. The limit is 300 megabytes, but it's hosted on our private server. So if you ever have issues with internet connectivity or things like that, it doesn't sound like you do, but this is another alternative to hosting content. And then the final option that we have here is you can actually search YouTube's database for a video if you don't have a URL handy. So that's what I'm going to do today. Let's say I just kind of know the title of a TED Talk that I wanted to use. And what we do is we actually populate the results from YouTube. So the exact same thing that I would see on youtube.com is what shows here. I select the video that I want. I could preview it, but I remember this from a previous day. So this is exactly the video that I want to use. I'm just going to click add, and then I'll be brought straight into my video builder. Any questions on that process?
I have a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a YouTube video that you pull in to your to use in your bulb, are you able to cut out the beginning and the end and splice it up, or is it, you know what I'm saying, like that?
Mm-hmm.
Part, can you cut that off there?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess like the first action that I always suggest taking is kind of that trimming process. You can access it by hovering over this orange icon and clicking trim video. And you'll notice that two markers appear on either end of the scrub bar that I can click and drag to remove portions that I want to remove from the student view. If there's part in the middle of the video, let's say this is irrelevant content for today's lesson, I just select that moment in time, and then I can click add internal crop segment, and those markers appear but now in the center of the video. They can also click and drag. I can add as many of these as I want to my video, depending again on how I want to customize that student experience. And then once I am done, I click exit crop mode, and everything that has this diagonal slash through it is removed from the student view. As the instructor, I always have access to the entire video, but the students will only have access to the parts that are not removed for them. And what's really cool about our trim video, I guess, section of the builder is that you're able to adjust those edits. So it's unlike a typical video splicer where you have to save like an original copy just in case. With our platform, it's really easy to go in and make adjustments to the edits that you have made to the student view. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So after we've trimmed the video down, the next thing I always suggest is adding those different questions. So again, orange icon is going to be home base for all your actions here, and then purple add questions. Of these 8 question types, multiple choice, check all that apply, and fill in the blank are auto-graded questions for you. So once a student finishes a lesson, these grades get pushed directly into the PlayPosit gradebook. You don't have to worry about grading those by hand at all. So it's a really easy way to kind of make the process more efficient on your end. The free response question is a graded question type. However, it's pretty simple to grade these. And I'll go through that process after we finish this video building portion. And then the last 4 questions are reflective pause, web embed, polling, and discussion forum are all ways for you to interact with your students without there being a grade associated with the response. They're all ungraded question types. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a multiple choice question and give it a sample title here. Notice that as I'm typing, I have access to this rich text editor above. Here I can do things like bold, italicize, create numbered lists, insert tables, but also I have access to an equation editor. So we use LaTeX at the top of the line. Equation editor, any kind of symbol that you would like to use for a mathematic or a scientific problem, you should be able to find here. So you can definitely incorporate that anytime you as the instructor type. Here's also where we're able to upload images. Kind of at the beginning, we had images of the different scenes of the play or diagrams or things like that. You can absolutely upload those images here, and they'll be incorporated with your question. And this is also where you have that audio uploader. So I just simply click that icon here, and I can record up to 90 seconds of audio. Again, this could be me giving directions for a student, especially if they need maybe questions read aloud for them in addition to reading them. If I'm giving this question in a foreign language, I want my students to maybe hear my accent properly. I can upload that and they can hear it as part of the question as well. As we type the different options for this multiple choice, again, if I click into these, I can have access to that rich text editor for each individual option that I have for an answer. I select the correct option, I click save. It changes from orange to purple just to notify me that everything now is saved in our platform. If at this point my prep was ending and I left PlayPosit for a bit, I can come back and pick up exactly where I left off. In addition to kind of those edits that you can make within the question, we have some higher level edits that you can also adjust. The first is you can randomize answers, and then you can adjust the point value. So those auto-graded questions, again, that multiple choice, check all that apply and fill in the blank, those are all defaulted out of 1 point. You can adjust that to be out of 10 points. It just depends on how you want to weight that question. So in this case, let's say it's out of 4. And then in addition to customizing that random answers or the point scale, I also want to go one step further and leave feedback for my students that missed this question. So when they click option A, that means that they have chosen incorrectly. I can actually leave them in notes. So maybe close, however you missed X, Y, or Z step. Again, so they don't have this misconception throughout the entire video, and I can remediate that error in the moment for them. In addition to this note that I'm providing, this answer choice of A also demonstrates to me as the instructor that they just weren't paying attention to the first part of this video. So I'm actually going to push them back to the beginning so they can review that content again. To do that, I'm going to click into that gear icon. I'm going to call this our jump to feature. In this case, I only have one video in my playlist, so I'm just going to select the one that's available. And then this green icon appears that I can click and drag to determine where I want students to go when they select that answer choice. So when they select answer choice A, I want them to go to this 1:17 marker, again, to just review this content before they even continue with the rest of the lesson. So now when I click this gear icon, I see the feedback is there as well as that jump to marker. And I can click save. When students come back to this question again, they can't change their original response, but they can leave me a student explanation piece that, again, I can go through on my end and determine if it's worth half credit or full credit for. The next kind of question I want to go over is the free response question. So let's go ahead and I'm going to add a question after this one in that same moment in time. So I'm going to start stacking some questions right here. So we start with a multiple choice. The next one will be a free response question. Again, I have access to this rich text editor above. But what's really powerful about the free response question is that your students also have access to this text editor when they write their responses. So if you want your students to respond, with an audio recording or with an image or, utilizing this equation editor, the free response question type is going to be the one you want to use. The last two questions I wanted to go over is going to be the fill in the blank, just because it's a little bit funky how it's laid out. So if I check fill in the blank, we'll go ahead and put sample sentence here. And anytime I want to add a fill in the blank for an answer option, I use this icon and then that space appears. For the answers, it takes any acceptable answer. If you have multiple answers that are acceptable, you separate them by a comma. So say answer here, 1, the number 1. All those answers are acceptable. We don't we don't differentiate correctness based on capitalization. However, spelling does count. I'm gonna go ahead and click save there. And the last question I want to go over for you guys is our discussion forum. So the default layout or the default functionality of our questions is that they always appear on the left-hand side. It will pause the video, so students must interact with that question before they can go backwards or forwards in your bowl. The only exception to that rule is going to be our discussion forum question. So let's go ahead and select the moment in time here and add a question, discussion forum, and then a marker appears that I can click and drag to determine how long I want my students to have access to this discussion forum. When it begins, it appears on the right-hand side here, and my prompt will appear up top. And then students will be able to respond to my prompt. They'll see their peers' responses in the chat box. They can respond to their peers. So it's a great way to mimic a traditional classroom conversation, even though this lesson might be taken asynchronously and independently. And then also when your students are responding to your prompt, they have access to this text editor as well. I'm gonna go ahead and click save. And now my lesson for the day is complete. I have all my different interactions set and the video trimmed properly. Are there any questions on the questions that I went over today?
Are you able to reorder your questions? Can you drag and drop them like the way you order them?
Yes. So you can drag and drop questions here if you want something that's more pinpointed. Let's say like I actually want this question at the 1 minute 33 second marker. If I click this timestamp, I gotta click into the question first. I can actually adjust it by the second. So 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'll click save. The only time that becomes an issue is if questions are stacked. So if these questions are stacked in the moment, I'll have to click and drag these over and then individually. And then it looks like we have a question via the chat forum.
No, I just typed in what she said.
Oh, great, yes.
Just in case the audio wasn't good.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Is it automatically saved or is there a save button? Does it say like every 10 seconds or something like that?
Great question. So as long as my questions are purple and not orange, so if I click into this, right now it's not saved. Once I click save, everything is good to go. And if I leave this and come back to it at a different time, I'll pick up exactly where I left off.
What about the actual ball? Is that auto saved?
Yes, it's auto saved.
You haven't retitled the bowl yet?
Not yet, but I do have that option.
Okay, so that's just clicking on it up in the title box?
Yep, I can click on it. It'll take me to a settings page, which I'll show you how to access in a moment as well. And this is where you can change the title, add a learning objective that you can see when they start the bulb. And then there's just kind of macro settings as well. So if you want to enable viewers to rewind during questions, again, the default is that they can't. But if you want them to maybe seek out the answer in the bulb that they've just seen, you can enable that feature here. If you want viewers to be able to skip questions and fast forward, you can enable those options. This is probably not something that I've used in my 7th grade classroom. However, depending on the content or the lesson, these could be really useful tools for students. And then also, if you want viewers to be able to retake the bulb once it's complete for full credit, you can enable that feature here. The only caveat about this is that there's no limit to the amount of times a student can retake a bulb. You'll be able to see how many attempts they've done, but you won't be able to see the previous scores. We only save the most recent one. Here again, you can adjust the title below. You can change the thumbnail if it's something from whatever YouTube auto-generates and you want to replace it with maybe the learning objective for that day or an agenda. You can manage captions here. So if you have a VTT or SRT caption file, we will host that and then it will play alongside your video. However, if you are using a video from YouTube or Vimeo, we automatically pull those captions from those sources. So the students have that option automatically to turn on those closed captions. And then this video source option here is really useful. So if for some reason you're using a video from YouTube and it gets pulled by the owner, so now it's no longer playing, if you find that same video maybe on Vimeo or SchoolTube or another hosting site, you can simply swap out the video source and your questions remain static. So you don't have to go in and recreate all your questions. You're just simply swapping out the video. And if it's another video that's different, but it still works, again, you can swap it out and then just drag your questions to where they make the most sense for that particular video. Any questions on these settings?
I have one question in the chat there for you.
All right, let me go ahead and so if a student doesn't finish in one sitting, they are able to go back to that PlayPosit bulb and pick up where they left off, as long as they authenticate it into PlayPosit. So if they're using that Google SSO or that Clever SSO, we save their progress for them. So if they start in class and they finish it, for homework later on, their progress is saved. The reason why I kind of make that distinction is that there is one way to assign a bulb that doesn't require students to authenticate. There's a lot of pros to that, but a con is that if students aren't authenticating with that single sign-on, then their progress isn't saved in our database. And I'll kind of go over that a little bit more in depth in just a moment. Okay, so that's the settings icon. You can also access that here by clicking the triple dot in the top right corner and clicking settings. The last thing I wanted to go over is how to add multiple videos to one bulb. So in the top left corner, this kind of play icon, I have the option to add multiple videos. So I can, again, add another URL, upload an MP4, and then it'll kind of work as a playlist where after my first video ends, the second one will begin, and so on and so forth. You can add about 12 to 15 videos per bulb, and a little bit more than that, but when you kind of pass that 15-point marker, things might slow down a lot, so we always suggest trying to keep it under, about a dozen videos per bulb. All right, any questions on the video builder in general before we move to kind of that data page and then how to assign a bulb?
Nope. I think we're good.
All right, awesome. So once we have created a bulb, we'll go over the assigning the bulb process first. The next thing to do is assign that bulb to a class. So we're back in this video builder. Go ahead and click finish. And I'm brought straight into my bulbs library here. I see this bulb I've just created. And there's a couple of ways that I can assign it. So the first is that if your students are accessing PlayPosit, through Clever SSO or through the Google SSO, and they're in PlayPosit and they're in your course, you can simply click these triple dots, click assign, and assign this bulb I've created to whatever class it needs to go to. That way when your students log into PlayPosit, they're in your course and they'll see the next assignment they have to complete. They'll press play and they'll take your content. The other way of assigning a lesson to a student is through a shared URL link. To do that, I'm going to click this share icon, and I can copy this URL and paste it maybe in my own Google Classroom site. If I have my own website, I can place this link here. When students click on it, they will be prompted to log in through PlayPosit. Again, they'll just click SSO, Google, sign in with Clever, and then they'll take that lesson as if they would have taken it in PlayPosit itself. So those are the two ways of assigning a lesson. Clicking assign, students access it within PlayPosit, or sharing this link to another site, and students, click that link and sign in with Clever, and then take your content that way. There's a couple of different ways that you can customize how you want students to take a lesson that are not that single sign-on option. So the two ways I just went over ensure that student progress is saved, and that's so they can access it multiple times without having to restart the lesson. The other options are really useful, but they don't save the progress of the student. So as far as assigning it twice, both in Google Classroom or in PlayPosit, I think that would be fine because it's the student's email is the same, so it would recognize that in both places the lesson has been taken or hasn't. If your students are okay with going through two different workflows, I would say you can absolutely do that. I would always suggest that that you choose one workflow for your students for your particular course, and that's how they access your lesson. Using Classroom and some not. And again, this may be something you can talk about like as a grade level. If it's something like, hey, some teachers using Google Classroom, some are using PlayPosit. But for an individual class, I would definitely say using only one, but I don't think it'd be an issue for using both. Okay, so the other ways that you can assign a URL.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
What's up?
I'm confused about how you're talking about the SSO and saving it to work. So they would web-based outside the building, they would be able to save their work. I'm not really understanding.
Single sign-on. I'm talking about them logging into Clever.
But if they're at home.
They should go in through the Clever portal from the homepage. Like always have them do that. Is it? Yeah. Sorry, it's a Clever related question.
No worries.
If they log in through the Clever portal, they can. Yeah. How does this play back on phones? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's as long as it's a pretty recent smartphone, it works. Like I have an old Galaxy S5, and it works fine on that. I know it works for the most recent iPhones and like a couple like generations back. If it's a pretty old smartphone, maybe more than like 2 years old, it might not function properly again just because of the optimization of our platform with some of those older devices might not be perfect. But anything that's pretty current in the past 2 years, 3 years, it should work fine.
Okay, thank you.
The other couple options I want to go over is if you wanted to share a URL with a colleague, let's say you're collaborating, you would definitely toggle on this share to colleagues option here. This won't record a grade because your colleagues, your co-teachers just want to navigate, the lesson without having it be associated for a grade. You're able to fast forward, backtrack, kind of click around in this mode. So that's one option to also share a URL. The other two options, the first doesn't require use or authenticate. So if you enable this option here, it will only ask for their first and last name, and then it will show them a list of your courses and then join a course for that day or for this particular assignment. The data would be housed there, and then again, progress isn't saved, but it's just another way for people to access this content. This is really useful if you are ever doing something maybe with students or like parents or something like that. You have like a parent-teacher night, you create a course, parent-teacher night, you label it that way, you send this link out, the parents put in their first and their last name, they click into that parent-teacher night course, or in this case, that class, and then they'll see the bulb for that day, maybe pre-work, maybe if you missed it, check out what we went over, something like that. If you don't want even viewers to join a course, you just want their first and their last name, you can enable this final option here. I have a lot of different librarians, some of my other districts using these two options to create maybe like a best way to access the library's resources, tips on research essays, maybe other just kind of functionalities that students can access as a resource without them having to have a grade associated with their response or without them having to join a class per se. So these two options are really great for those cases. If you're doing I have some teachers doing a flipped syllabus for the beginning of the school year where they send the parents of the students a video on procedures or on classroom expectations instead of having a simple like sign here, hopefully they read it, syllabus. They can actually monitor, make sure parents went through the quick 2-minute video and see timestamps and how they responded. So those are just some other options that you can really utilize for enabling these two features. Again, your typical standard, I'm assigning a bulb to a class, I would definitely use this basic URL here because it requires students to log in through Clever, and then also it saves their progress. So it's just a little bit easier for them to access. Any questions on those different shared URLs? All right. So the last thing, now that we have created a bulb, we've created a class, we've assigned that bulb to a class, the last thing we want to do is now monitor those student grades. So if you click that triple dots next to the bulb icon and click monitor, you'll be brought to our question by question breakdown page. So I just created this bulb in my sample environment, so I don't have any student data. So I'm going to switch over to a different screen. So when you click that monitor option, it will be taken here to this question by question breakdown page for that lesson. You see the student scores above and kind of how they answered in aggregate. So for their average score, I see information, who's completed the lesson, who hasn't. I see how they did for each individual question overall. Gray are going to be ungraded questions, so like that discussion forum or that reflective pause. Green are going to represent correct responses, red incorrect responses, and then orange are going to be responses that I have to grade by hand. So if I scroll down, I see the individual student data, again, how these individual students answered for each particular question. If I go to the very bottom, I see some of these orange boxes that I need to grade. So if it's a free response question, it has this pencil and paper icon. To grade it, I click into it. I see my prompt up top. I see my student response. I see how long they took on that response, when it was submitted. And then if I click this drop down here, I can assign a point value. In this case, I made this question out of the default 3 points. But again, you can adjust this to out of 10, depending on how much weight you want to give that question. Once it's graded, it changes from orange to green, just to let me know that it's all done. Since I am a former English teacher, I know that grading free response questions can be pretty time consuming, and clicking in and out of boxes is kind of annoying in a way. So if you want to open them all, you click the triple dots next to the question. All the boxes open at once. You can easily scroll down and assign everyone a point value pretty efficiently. Go ahead and close that. The only other time you'll see an orange box is if a student leaves you a student explanation. So this is a check hole that apply. I click into it and I see that my student missed this question. So the default is they got a score of 0. That's what's saved in my grade book. But they left me an explanation here. Hey, Ms. Perez, I read over this too fast, or whatever it happens to be. I can read this explanation that they have, and I can choose to assign, full credit in this case. If it was out of 3 points, maybe I give them 1 point for partial credit, if I choose to. So that's another option that you have on your end. Again, just to give you that leeway. The other features I wanted to show you here are located with these triple dots. So to the right of that, you see the student feedback. At the end of every lesson, students are prompted to give you feedback, on a scale of 1 to 5. Was this lesson understandable? And then some written feedback as well. This is just a great way to see, what's working when you're creating walls, maybe what's not. It's just, a good data point for you. The triple dots at the far end allow you to reset a student's score by hand. So if you don't want to give students that option to take a lesson over when they want to, that was a feature that was enabled in the settings. If you don't want to enable that, you can reset scores by hand as well. Again, give you some more control over who's taking a lesson again, how many times they're taking it again. And the final thing I wanted to show you was this chat option here. So when you're on this monitor page, you see the data live. So if a student is just bombing all these questions, missing a lot of maybe really easy review questions, you can chat them and be proactive and reach out and say, hey, I noticed that you're missing a lot of things. There's something I can clarify. Do you need help with something? Again, it just gives you that option to remediate in the moment rather than having to wait until you see that student the next time they're in your class. On the flip side, students also have the option to reach out to you and to chat. So if they are taking a lesson and they are lost, they can send you a chat message. And as long as you're on this question by question breakdown page, you will see that notification, and then you can choose to respond to help them out. When I was teaching, I had to have office hours where Mr. Perez was available for 45 minutes every day, evening between here and here. Call him if you need help. An alternative to that could be, you just have this question by question breakdown page open, and you'll see notifications when students have issues. So that's one of the options there. The last thing I wanted to show you is this transcript for the discussion forum. So I clicked into this discussion forum icon. I see all my students' transcripts. If they did something like uploaded a audio recording, I have access to that as well. And then I can export that discussion into a format that's printable if I wanted to use it as a review or as a starter for the next day's class or something like that. All right, I know that was a lot of information. Any questions on this monitor page?
I don't think so.
No.
Awesome, great. Okay, so I think those are the things I wanted to go over as far as the major areas. The last thing I wanted to point out is just this pre-made bulb section. It's a great way to kind of get your feet wet with our platform. We have over 500,000 pre-made bulbs that you have access to. So if I click into this icon here, I see all the pre-made bulbs library. Using this upside down conical icon in the top right corner, I can search by keyword, filter with grade level, subject, content, such as standard, and then just kind of whittle down and preview lessons that I potentially want to use. When I find a lesson that I really love, I just click copy, I confirm, and now if I go to my bulbs, I see that copy now in my library. Of course, I can rename it. It's my own copy now. I can add questions, remove questions, trim it down, adjust it. So it's a great way, again, to access PlayPosit without having to search for your own videos. You can have a base to start from and don't have to recreate the wheel. The final thing I wanted to show is just this My Community tab. Here, all of your teachers in your school district have their bulbs populate in this area. So if you're working with, collaborating with teachers from different school sites, or if you want to see what the science department has done at a different school, you can absolutely filter, again, by keyword, grade level, subject, and see those different pieces made by them that you can use, copy, adjust however you see fit. And this is only available for your guys' view as a school community. So it's not, people can't search, your content specifically outside of that instance. Okay, that was the last thing I want to go over. I know we're kind of running out of time today, so I wanted to give you guys a moment for a Q&A at the end, maybe kind of start the PlayPosit process, and I'll be here on call for any issues. Any questions before we kind of release for that time?
Just an overall question for any future trainings, for maybe once they get in and start building bulbs, if they want to do something more advanced, do we contact you or Salima?
Contact me. We are transitioning some of our support. So Salima's moving to like a different specialization of supports, and I'm taking over for you guys. So definitely reach out to me.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, guys? Okay. Yeah, they said thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
We have a question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, subtitles that are already on a video, or are we able to get rid of them?
So you are not able to delete them because we don't, as PlayPosit, we don't have permissions to alter the original video, and part of that's, included in that is the caption. So, students can always turn off those closed captionings, but unless it's your own video, you can't remove those caption files.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or?
Nope. I think we're good.
All right. Would you prefer me to hang around for the next couple of minutes just in case people have questions, or you guys feel confident where I can hop off?
I think they're good.
Okay.
No worries. Rob, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. And if you have any questions in the future, it's just rob@playposit.org.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.